All right.
Welcome to Boomer Bongo Boulevard. I'm Mike. Just Mike. Along with me is Ron. Just Ron over there in the Orioles uniform. And did they call you up from the minors, Ron? Or?
No, it's just, they were playing on TV. I watched them play on TV the last 3 days.
So you got to get.
And I was wearing this yesterday because this is their Saturday uniform. They always do the orange on Saturday.
Right.
So I wore it yesterday and I already had the jersey out. So I wore it again today while I was watching them play on Roku this morning.
I'll tell you what. People do not know how lucky they are because today all we're going to do is beg you to subscribe to our channel and
constantly. Every 30 seconds.
Every 30 seconds, all we're going to do. It's going to be like a fundraiser for public television.
1, 2, 3, subscribe.
Yeah. We've got banks of people ready to answer the phones, or I don't know. I don't guess they answer the phone. Now we're going to talk about comics, not stand-up comics, but the what used to be called the funnies, and people our age.
Funny papers.
Yeah, the funny papers.
Comic strip, daily strip.
The things that were in the newspaper. And, I have very specific memories of the funnies. I don't know if you do or not, but I remember when our dad would come in sometimes. We didn't subscribe to a newspaper when we were real small, when our other brother, Randy, who's 2 years younger than me, were real small, and Becky. But our dad would bring in a newspaper from time to time. Usually it was like a local paper, but back then they would have funnies in them. Yet some of them he would bring in didn't have the funnies in them. So there were one or two editions that he would pick up. And so we were always on pins and needles. Was this one with the funnies? And I think he liked to mess with us by getting one that didn't have it, or maybe he took them out or something. We couldn't read. But there, boy, you'd look through and, there they were. There they were, the funnies. There was Little Orphan Annie, and you'd recognize the pictures, and Dondi and Peanuts. And
that's so much forgotten about.
Dondi? Yeah. Dondi was pretty crazy. And we, and then the other thing I remember is our grandfather, who you don't remember as well as I do. I remember him before he had his strokes and he was healthy, and he liked to read the Sunday funnies to me, the comics. I think he liked the color funnies. He didn't like, anybody knows anything about the funnies knows day to day, black and white.
Yeah.
Weekends on Sunday, they had the big fold out single section that had all one section was devoted to the comics, and he'd like to sit down and read those to me. And I remember he liked Bringing Up Father, which a lot of people called Jiggs.
Yeah,
the main character was this rags to riches guy called Jiggs, and he really liked. I didn't care for it much, but I was willing to put up with it to get to the things that I liked. So it was.
Well, the one thing is really funny. What made me think about this subject? I was in the grocery store and I was walking down the chips section, and I'm like, "Holy crap, Andy Cap!" Andy Cap hot fries. I'm like, I can't believe they still sell those. Nobody even knows who the hell Andy Cap is anymore.
Oh, Andy Cap. Andy Cap is still being produced.
Yeah,
it's very still popular. Of course, it came from England, and it's popular over in England. And I like to read that one, even if I find one occasionally. And I have a couple of comics. Actually, I'm going to make a recommendation right off the top here, Ron. Is if you'd like to read the comics and you don't have them in your paper anymore, or like a lot of papers, they only have a few. They don't have, they have 5 or 6, if that. Go to this website, a couple of websites here. GoComics.com.
Yeah.
GoComics.com has a lot, but they do change a lot. They're always changing their procedures, and you don't have to pay to look at their comics, but it's much easier.
It's been in a while, but
it's much easier to use your site if you pay. But another one is Archamax, and I don't know if it's .com or whatever, but you can just put in Archamax, ARCAMAX, and they've got all kinds. Now they don't have exactly everything that Go Comics does, but they have a lot of things that Go Comics does. And if anybody out there is a teacher or uses, likes to communicate with the class, one thing that Go Comics has is they've got a little search area up there, and if you put a topic in, it will produce comics on that topic.
Oh,
So a teacher can,
interesting.
use the comics to maybe teach a lesson about,
Yeah.
whatever you're doing. History topics are real big, but you can get some other things too. One I used to like to read, and it's still kind of knocking around, is Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Oh,
You ever read
yeah.
that
I
anywhere?
used to actually check those books out of the library. They make paperbacks out of
Yeah.
a compilation of all those. And I've
Oh,
been to several of those museums too. I always
yeah.
love all that stuff.
My grandson likes Ripley's Believe It or Not. It's a single panel. It's made on a single panel format, kind of like the Far Side is. But
Mhm.
normally they split the single panel with some kind of a divider and do at least two Believe It or Not
Yeah.
stories, or sometimes three Believe It or Not
Well, they got
stories,
so
usually on a
many,
theme.
to
It,
pull from.
hey, talk about getting ready for Jeopardy, a Jeopardy episode. That'll do it for you.
Oh, for sure.
So, I was listing comic strips we could use, and there are just so many.
Yeah.
And
I just had to pick out some that I remembered enjoying the most and just
yeah,
kind of jot them
what do you
down.
got to say about it since it was your idea?
Well, the first ones I thought of The Wizard of Ed was the first one I thought of. Besides Peanuts, that's to me, that's kind of like when I talk about music, I always go to Monkeys and Beatles. So I
Right,
start thinking of something else first.
right.
And Wizard of Ed, and I had forgotten some of the stuff about it, and I started looking up things like this. Made me laugh. But said I was reading about it. Said, what was the Wizard of Ed's golden rule? And I went, okay, I got to see what that is. He who has the gold makes the rules.
I've heard that one before. When you said Peanuts, I had a thought about Peanuts. It's not the only comic strip that's maybe better known by a nickname, but so
Yeah,
many people call Peanuts Charlie Brown. Wonder what
Charlie
Charlie
Brown.
Brown's
Yeah,
doing today. I was reading Charlie Brown the other day. Like Wizard of Ed is called the Wizard of Ed.
yeah,
And BC, which is also done originally by Johnny Hart,
yeah.
is called BC. Nobody has a nickname for it, I don't think. The Caveman comic, maybe something like that.
Now, this is something funny I learned about BC today. Okay, now it's still going on. It's probably on that site
Yeah.
you were talking about. Okay, now this is really funny. Of course, the politically correct things. Okay, there were two women in the strip. Of course, there was all the guys. BC and Wiley and
Uh-huh.
the guy with glasses. That what was it? Clumsy Carp or something like that. Well, anyway, and the two women were called. Do you remember? The Fat Broad and the
yeah,
Cute Chick.
that's right. That's right.
But they've given them names now. They don't call them that anymore. They hadn't called them that since like 2019. The Fat Broad, who always beat the hell out of snakes with her club,
Yes. Very aggressive.
was so mean all the time. They call her Jane, and Cute Chick is Grace. I'm like, come on, man. It's Fat Broad and Cute Chick, man.
Well,
I mean, you're caveman. Come on, man.
I don't know. That is pretty insulting, though. I could see somebody
Of course,
going,
it's really politically correct. They're cavemen. Come on.
There's a comic, and I can't think of the name of it now. But I kind of stopped reading it because it's about a son. I really wish I didn't know I was going to talk about this, but since you brought it up, it's about a young man. He's in his 20s, I think, and he still lives at home with
Yeah.
his parents, and that's a jumping off point for
Yeah.
all the hilarity that ensues. But it's a daily comic strip, and I just finally stopped reading it because because it makes everybody look bad, and that's hard to do. But one of their running
something like Funky Winkerbean or something.
no. That is one, but that's not the one I'm talking about.
I'm trying to remember which one. Yeah,
the art looks similar. I wish anyway. I think a lot of people recognize it. I don't recommend the strip because everybody comes off looking bad. The mom, by the way, is a radio talk show host, and the dad is I think maybe a lawyer, but the kid, the guy in it is in his 20s, and he's got this doofus friend, and he's always trying to meet girls, and the girls just just shoot him down in the most humiliating way. But he's an idiot. He's lazy. He doesn't like to
Yeah.
work. That's one of the running gags. Is he's always got a different job. But the women in the strip don't come off any better either. They're so mean and cruel to him. He's not a terrible looking guy. A lot of times, all he'll do is walk up to some young lady he's trying to meet and say hi, and
Yeah.
she'll throw a drink in his face. And maybe that happens in real life, but it's still just like I said. Nobody comes off looking good. And I stopped reading it. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is kind of insulting. You can insult some of the people some of the time, but don't insult everybody all the time. That's just
somebody's got to be sympathetic, or it's
yeah.
not comic.
And it is sort of humorous, and the art's
Yeah.
really good. And that's what I really liked about it. Hey, you're an art major, or we're an art major. There are a couple comic strips? I'll give you one, High and Lois, which is an old-fashioned one,
Yeah.
and it's been around forever. And it's just a little mild strip. It's almost never hilarious, but I really like the art, and I read it for the art. I like the art, and especially on Sundays when they do the color sections, I like the art on it. If you got one
Well,
like
if you'll
that,
notice, the one thing they always go for, and this is probably the most important thing about doing a comic strip, unless it's something like Prince Valiant, which was very,
right, yeah,
that
that one was a comic book
artwork.
level.
I spent a lot of time on it. But they try to come up with how to draw characters with as few and as simple lines as humanly possible.
Yeah, I suppose.
It's kind of like doing a logo. You just want something simple. You don't want a bunch of complicated stuff.
But we were just talking about Calvin and Hobbes, and Bill Watterson, that strip ran about 10 years, and then Watterson just retired and left us all to go. Gee whiz,
85 to 95, actually.
Oh man!
10 years.
And by the way, we're talking about more modern things today because people of our age still kind of yearn for those comic strips.
Yeah.
And like to read them. It's a good way to get nostalgic. But I like to read them. I like to pick them up and read them, if not every day, a few days a week. But Bill Watterson does this very intricate art sometimes, particularly on the Sunday strip. He did.
Oh yeah, with the background stuff and everything like that. Calvin and Hobbes themselves are simplified.
Right.
But a lot of the backgrounds are really interesting, especially on the Sunday.
I like a comic book artist, not a comic book, but a comics, a daily comics, funnies. Let's call them the funnies. It makes it much easier to do. I listed off some though. I'll tell you one that's recognized, and to this day I think some of this stuff, some of it's come true. But Dick Tracy and his communicators.
I used to like Dick Tracy.
Oh,
that was one of those that I used to like. It was just I liked the way it looked,
Sure.
I was a kid, and it was easy to follow.
Sure. And, good plot lines, bad guys. It was very Batman, Superman. I think a movie was made of it. Warren Beatty famously made a Dick Tracy movie, and but they had the watches and the anti-gravity, which I think he's still on to something. To this day, I think magnetism is you pick up magnets and play with them and you go, isn't there some way we can use this better than just sticking things to refrigerators? I once got in an argument with a science teacher. I said, magnets are doing work all the time. Shouldn't we harness that? And the science teacher she goes, they're not working all the time. And I'm like, really? I stick a magnet on a refrigerator and it holds something up there? And I started to say, but I didn't. I started to say, I'll tell you what, let me give you a piece of paper and you just stand there and hold it on that refrigerator. See how long you last.
Yeah.
See how long you last. See if you're doing any work. See if you break a sweat after a while, because I bet you will. I didn't say that. Boy, I came close to it. In my head, I had a great comeback, and I was just didn't want to get in a huge thing, but there's work going on with a magnet. Why can't we use it?
It's funny how often problems get solved with people just thinking in a more simple fashion. Like one of my favorite guys, this is way off subject, but you reminded me of it, and I'll go with it. That Ballard that discovered the Titanic.
Yeah.
Real smart guy. Okay. But this is my favorite thing about him. is he can think in simple, logical ways. Okay, like I remember seeing this little documentary where he was hunting for some kind of sunken ship, and it'd been lost for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And the way he found it, he figured out. He said that they carried wine a lot as their cargo, and so he just goes, "Well, I bet those sailors were stealing some wine and drinking it and throwing it overboard a lot over the years."
Could have been. Could have been.
And that was his theory to be able to find it, because he thought everybody was way off. And he got down there on the, kind of sort of tried to trace, one of the routes that ship was known to take. And he started finding empty wine casks on the ocean floor, followed it like breadcrumbs, and found that dead gum ship, man.
Well, that's how you can tell somebody.
Wine casks.
Oh, that's how you tell somebody who's really smart. And by the way, I just got a text from Steve, one of our regulars, and he doesn't know we're not doing this live, are we?
No.
Okay, so we better not be. But he's texting me about something. He mentioned I got a text from him the other day, and he mentioned when we were talking about long running TV shows, music TV shows. One we left out was Austin City Limits, which he was right. That's one of the great ones.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But hey, I'm just going to run down some of these I've got here. Little Orphan Annie, Brenda Starr, reporter.
Brenda Starr, yeah. She made a bad movie about that.
She did. Hey, she's got dinner. Here's one I never figured out. Apartment 3G. Do you remember seeing that one? And I would read it.
That goes in my list of stuff that I just don't get.
I couldn't figure it out. Well, I liked the art on it, and I'm thinking, and every once in a while I would go, when I was 12 or whatever, I'd go, I'm going to start reading this. And as far as I could tell, from one day to the next, they weren't even connected. It would just be some guy, knocking on a door and trying to get somebody's attention. And the next day, it would be somebody at work getting a tough assignment. These were not funnies. They were serious strips. But Judge Parker, you remember Judge Parker was the same way.
Judge Parker, that's another one that goes in that category.
I couldn't figure out what was going on.
Don't get it.
And then I'd go down to
Canyon. Just didn't get it. Steve Canyon.
Steve Canyon. Well, Steve Canyon, he would be in the same location.
But still, I just didn't get it,
I've got
Mary Worth. I don't even know what Mary Worth did for a living.
No.
The weirdest one of all to me, Gasoline Alley. What the hell is that?
Some people love that one.
What
Apartment
the hell? Gasoline Alley.
Do you remember Alley Oop? Alley Oop.
I'm familiar with it because I'm, an aficionado of things like that. So it's the time traveling caveman.
Yeah. One that was huge.
And a famous song. So
yeah, Alley Oop. Yeah, I started to do that as my song of the week, but I got a different song of the week. I don't know if you do, but the Lil Abner. Now that was very influential. You know what we got out of Lil Abner? The comic strips died with its author Al Capp, but years and years ago. But what came out of Lil Abner? Do you know?
I know they made a movie out of it.
Well, have you ever heard of a Sadie Hawkins dance?
Oh yeah.
That's from Lil Abner. That's from Lil Abner. And
okay.
I guess you can't ask for much more than to have a permanent effect on the culture with something like. Almost every high school in the whole world's had at least one Sadie Hawkins dance, and couldn't beat that. Garfield was still rolling, rolling,
still around.
One I didn't like, I got it, but I never really liked it. Was Beetle Bailey, and it's been around forever. It was
just a little too something. I don't know if this isn't a daily comic, but I enjoyed this Army-related strip a lot better. I thought Sad Sack was way better than Beetle Bailey.
Yeah. Sad Sack was a big comic book character too. They had Sad Sack comic books.
Yeah, that's where I was familiar with. Was the comics.
But I never got Beetle Bailey. I got it, but it just I didn't really like anybody in it. I didn't like Sarge.
Blah,
Yeah, Beetle's lazy. I wouldn't have wanted to be
around. It never knocked me out, and made me really laugh. There was never anything in there that was significant or very funny, I didn't think.
Blondie, you talked about.
I see
Arlo and
Blondie
Janice.
was funny. Blondie
Yeah.
would make me laugh. You
You
know,
ever read Arlo and Janice?
I remember that. That was a good one.
It's still going on. It's still
Oh
active.
wow.
The
Okay.
author is still putting
Yeah.
out Arlo and Janice, and I forget the name of the author, but it's based in the South. If you read it
Yeah.
carefully, you can't really tell, but if you read carefully, every once in a while you get a hint. But here's the thing about Arlo and Janice. I read it for years and just really liked it. Sometimes you'd have to look over the strip a couple of times to get it, and then it would be particularly funny. And then they hit this period of 5 or 6 years, and I would read it occasionally, and I don't know what was going on, but it was like the guy decided to make the least funny comic strip he could, and it was just horrible. There were no
Yeah.
punchlines really. There was nothing funny about it. It was hard to even understand what they were talking about. And then maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, I started back reading it again, and it was funny again. It was almost like the original author shifted over into another dimension, and they got
Yeah.
a different author shifted into this dimension, our dimension, and started being funny again. And now I really enjoy it. Although I hear it's everybody that reads it, if you read it online, you can see comments, which is great.
Yeah.
And a lot of the comments people are saying, well, they just feel like the author's winding Arlo and Janice down and going to end it because he's getting pretty old. He's in his 70s.
Yeah.
And you do see, and they do continuous storylines sometimes, and which I like. Hagar the Horrible,
Oh yeah.
Foxtrot. Do you know Foxtrot?
Yeah. I remember that now.
That's a little
Foxtrot.
crazy family. That one can be
Yeah.
really funny, but they only
Now, here's
produce
one that was kind of related to Arlo and Janice, except it was the artwork was a little different, more kind of realistic looking, for better or worse.
For Better or Worse.
With all
I've got
the
that.
kids.
And
And
now
that was
one,
the interesting thing they did about that. They actually progressed, and the kids grew up
yeah,
in the strip. And then they kind of ended it and rebooted it, and he started all over again and had them all really young again and started the whole thing over again, doing
yeah.
stuff with them back little again. You know?
Authors, actually, I read that one every day, and the
Yeah.
author basically just reran all of it. Every once in a while, there's a nod to redoing one. You can tell they've redone one, but most of the time it's the same old strip. Like that, you know, but it's a great strip, and sometimes it's funny. Rarely is it really funny, but sometimes it's funny, and but it's usually interesting. Some of the storylines you can get kind of wrapped up in them. Particularly right now, they're rerunning some of the ones where the oldest son is off in college and he's meeting girls and breaking up with one girl and trying to go with another girl and having all those issues that people often have when they're 21 and 22 and 23 and trying to 24 and 25 and 26 and 27 trying to settle on the one. But I like that one, and I like the art on that one. I put some other stuff. Dennis the Menace, a single panel, and then it's a multi-panel on Sunday. Talked a little about Pogo. Do you remember Pogo?
Yep.
We've met the enemy, and he is us.
I know the most famous line from Pogo. We have met the enemy, and he is us.
No truer words were ever spoken. I'm looking over here. We're leaving out some stuff. You know, here's a weird one. There's one called Baby Blues. I don't know if you know it. It's a little more current. They still produce new strips. And I rarely laugh really hard at it, but I like reading it. I like the art. It's real interesting. I like kind of keeping up with what's going on with the kids. I have some running stories sometimes that go from one day to the next. And I take a look at it from time to time. But I'm real neutral on it. But the funniest strip I ever read was from that comic, that funnies strip, Baby Blues. And I cut it out and I hung it up on my door to my classroom and left it up for years. And every kid that read it really liked it. And all it was a pretty simple concept that the dad is coming in with the son, and the son's been to a baseball game, and the mother says, "Well, what happened?" And the son's very disgusted. He throws his glove down and says, "We lost." And the mom says, "Well, you shouldn't be that way. You should just be there to have be out there to have fun. Did you have fun? And he just looks at her and storms out. And the mom looks at the husband and says, well, I guess I lost that one. And the dad goes, but did you have fun? I mean, I love that. Just, did you have fun losing the argument?
Of course, I just mention what my wife's her all-time favorites, Crankshaft.
Crankshaft.
That's the Clarksville guy that drove the school bus, and he was famous for, overfueling his barbecue and blowing it up. And it always looked like a mushroom cloud from a distance behind us.
Is there anybody? Isn't there a crankshaft teacher at every school?
I think so.
Or a bus driver.
Or something.
It's just that bitterness you get that some people get that they can't overcome from dealing with.
Man, for all I know, it might be Crankshaft now. Who knows?
I saw this T-shirt just the other day. It said, my wife and I have decided not to have kids. And then on the back it says, we're telling them tonight. Yeah, I guess they're putting them up for adoption. Oh, well, anyway. I don't know. Hey, you got a song of the week?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I didn't have one. Sometimes I can think of one, but...
Oh, my song of the week is Songs of the Week. I think this might be my first album of the week, and it's inspired by the comics, the funnies, and it's Vince Guaraldi, Charlie Brown Christmas, the Vince Guaraldi trio, the soundtrack from A Charlie Brown Christmas.
Oh, yeah, and I love that.
I just put that in and play it on a loop. I have about 5 copies of that. I bought it at least 3 or 4 times and made copies of it, and I have it in all my CD players. Starting about, I don't know, the first time it turns cool, really. Sometimes late September, and just play that straight through till maybe a week or 2 after Christmas, and it's just very little singing on it, but I really like it. If any of you out there are somehow unfamiliar with A Charlie Brown Christmas, you don't have to go out and see it. You don't have to go find it. It's on Apple Plus or something. You have to spend money to get it now, but or buy it. But if you've never seen it, see it. But you really don't have to see it. Just go find Vince Guaraldi and put his Christmas album in the soundtrack from that Charlie Brown Christmas. And notice it's
I see it on vinyl at Walmart every Christmas.
Oh yeah, you can. Yeah, I have it on vinyl. I have it on vinyl. I have it on CD. I have 2 CDs, so I bought at least 4, and I've got a cassette, an old cassette tape that one of our cars still plays cassettes, and that's where it stays, is in that car, and in the glove compartment it goes in Christmas. And, so that's the kind of up-to-date cars I have. Anything you want to add to the comics, Ron? Are there any we missed that you think are worthy of note?
Let's see. Well, I had a couple of them, but it's not really worth talking about, I don't think, to be honest. There's just so many.
Well, some of them are trailblazers. Calvin and Hobbes, just for being purely funny. One I do want to mention, which, by the way, Calvin and Hobbes Calvin at least, made a guest appearance just a few years ago in this strip. It's Pearls Before Swine. Have you ever read that?
Yep, I have.
Write it down. Pearls Before Swine.
Oh,
they're still producing.
I will add one thing. One thing I used to enjoy. If I went to another city, I used to love to check their Sunday paper out and see what comics they had.
What comics they had.
My comics didn't have. Like, for instance, I would love, every once in a while I'd run across Spider-Man, because Spider-Man was nationally syndicated for years, and it was never any paper I had.
And
but I did buy a collection later that had them all, with Stan Lee
Tarzan.
and John Romita
Tarzan too had a comic strip. Tarzan had a comic strip for a while.
I saw that a few times as well.
The Phantom.
Yeah. The Phantom famously had long running.
Well, we could talk about this a lot more, and maybe we will. Maybe we'll return to it. We might get some good comments. By the way, you folks are reading, feel free to comment. Ron can answer them. I'm not hooked up where I can answer them, but Ron can answer them, and he's pretty good about it. And,
we'd
like to get a few more comments. So on that note, I guess we'll wrap it up.
Subscribe. We forgot to say it every 30 seconds.
Yeah, subscribe.
Subscribe.
This has been another.
We want to get to 50 now. We got in the 40s, so let's get to 50.
43. Aren't we at 43 or something?
44? 43.
Okay, so
43.
Yeah, we want to get up there. Do some stuff. Comment. Treat us like you do the other the other podcast and YouTube channels and comment and subscribe. It'll be a lot of fun. That's another edition of Boomer Bongo Boulevard. I'm Mike Just Mike, and he is Ron Just Ron.
Ron Just Ron.